Hello everyone, مساء الخير. أنا سلمان نائب ملحق ثقافي في الأمباسات الأمريكان في الجزائر. We are very happy to have you here watching our special show today. Again, you're watching Let's Chat. It's a program that we have specifically about American culture, and it's brought to you by the U.S. Embassy's American Cultural Center, Algiers. We have several shows this month in March about the contributions of women in the United States and around the world, because March is Women's History Month in the United States. Today, we have a special show about women in aviation. It's a field that is dominated by men. And so every week we're trying to talk about women in all these different fields and what they've contributed. So today we have a very special show because we have a pilot who is American and a pilot who is Algerian. So I'm very excited to get to talk to them. Just a little note, هذا المحاضرة هتكون في اللغة الإنجليزية باش نعرفوا باللي راكم تحبوا تتحسنوا اللغة الإنجليزية تاعكم. دونك في نفس الوقت هيكون عندنا شوية ملخصات ومترجمات باللغة العربية في الدردشة. So we are going to have this chat in English primarily, and those of you who want to follow along in Arabic, we will put notes in there in Arabic for you in the chat. Please ask your questions. We have two very knowledgeable, experienced pilots that will answer your questions, so please place them in the chat. So aviation, I think it's a fascinating field. I thought it was the coolest job before I became a diplomat. And I still think it's probably a very cool job compared to being a diplomat, being stuck in an embassy sometimes. I wanted to become a pilot. I wanted to travel the world. I always loved sitting in planes, even for long transatlantic flights. I just thought it was fascinating that a machine that weighed thousands of pounds could fly across the ocean and transport hundreds of people at the same time. And I wanted to be at the head of that machine. I thought it was just an amazing experience to fly all around the world. And I ended up not doing that because my dad told me that, flight school is very expensive. So I decided to go for something else. And we'll talk to Miriam and Brandi, our guests today, about their experiences studying aviation. And I will say a bit about scholarships available for aviation later during the talk. Today I'm gonna start introducing our first guest, Brandi Cockrell. She is from Oklahoma State in the center of the United States. She graduated with a Bachelor of Science as a professional pilot in 2006 from Southeastern Oklahoma State University. And that's where she also met her Texas native husband from the very first day of private ground class. And after they were married, Brandi and Kenneth, her husband, both flight instructed for a year at the university. And in the summer of 2007, they both began flying for Endeavor Airlines. And later, Brandi started flying with United. Brandi has two little boys, Jet and Tiller are their names, and they will turn 12 and 7 years old in April. So happy early birthday to them. And she is currently a first officer on a B737 for United Airlines. Over to you, Brandi. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. That was a great introduction. I'm going to dive a little bit more into the specifics. So when I was a kid, I did not know what I wanted to be actually. It just really didn't cross my mind. And my senior year of high school, we started having the conversation of, what do you want to do with your life? And I just didn't know. I job shadowed some different things that just didn't work out for me. I said, well, what about Uncle Danny, which is my dad's best friend, but I called him Uncle Danny. His life looks really fun. He captain at Delta Airlines, always in Hawaii, all these wonderful places. It just seemed fascinating. So my parents set me up to go on a small airplane ride with him. We went up in a little Cessna. He took me to Southeastern, where he went to school, and took me on a tour. And I just thought this sounded fantastic. Of course, I only could see the ending picture. He kept telling me, it'll be a while before you're flying to Hawaii, and it'll be a while before you're making really good money. But an 18-year-old can't really process those things, or at least I couldn't. So I jumped right in. I had done one flight before I signed up at Southeastern to be a pilot. It is very expensive to go to flight school. I am lucky that I had just good enough grades and just good enough ACT score to get a full tuition waiver. So I did not have tuition. I did some other things like cheerleading and honors program to pay for room and board and books, but the flying was all out of pocket. There are scholarships here and there, but $1,000 here and $1,000 there doesn't go very far with flying. So it is very expensive, but I was lucky that the tuition and other things were paid for, which helps. So that really did help. I had a great time at Southeastern. It's a 4-year degree there. I went year round. So on the holidays, on the spring break, the summer break, I stayed there flying to get it all done in the 4 years. When I graduated, my husband and I both were flight instructors. Like you mentioned, we absolutely loved that job. Absolutely loved it. It was a great year, super busy, super fun. Started throwing our applications in at the regional airlines. The very first one that called us was Endeavor Airlines. We interviewed the same day in Memphis, Tennessee. Both got hired, and we were in training 2 weeks later, which was crazy. So we moved to Memphis. We did training. We both decided to be based in Detroit, Michigan. So I went from living in the South where it's warm to living in Detroit where there's snow. It was a little bit crazy. I had never flown in those conditions. I had never lived in those conditions, but it was great. So I was a pilot at Endeavor for 11 years, a captain on a CRJ 200, which is a 50-seat passenger airplane. It was mostly shorter flights, typically 2-hour flights or so, and you would do several flights a day. It was a very fun job. I really, really liked the tight community of the regional airline. I typically knew who I was flying with, and we had a personal relationship. We were all friends. That was really awesome. I was also a pilot recruiter for Endeavor Airlines. Super fun. They would send me to different college campuses and different flight schools, and I would get to recruit pilots and do interviews. That was probably the most fun that I had at work. And I also was a pilot mentor, which means they would assign you a brand new, fresh first officer, and you would mentor them through their first year at the airline, which is an awesome tool to have. So that's the airplane I was flying for 11 years. Super great airplane to transition to out of flight school. Really, really fun to fly. I absolutely loved it. And once I had been at Endeavor about 11 years, and there's some of the pilot recruiting stuff. And it kind of came to the point where, am I going to stay at the regional airline forever? Which is great. It was a great job, great money, great schedule. I should hit that part for a minute. I was home every day. So I had little kids, and I was home every single day, mostly flying at night, unless I was doing some pilot recruiting thing. So it was just a great way to raise babies, really. But
sorry to interrupt you, Brandi.
Yeah.
Just on that point, we have a question from Karima.
Okay.
She's asking, isn't it hard to manage between being a wife, a mother, and a pilot?
You know, it is hard. And I will say it was easier at that job. So I was so blessed and lucky that that job was just the most mom-friendly job in the world. I don't know anyone that has a full-time job that could have been more mom-friendly than working there. I lived in base. I typically was back at my house around 7 a.m. and I was home all day. And then I left my house anywhere from 7 to 9, 10 p.m., depending on the day. I'd fly a flight or two. We'd get a little nap, fly a flight or two. I was home all day. So I learned to nap when my kids nap when they were little. Eventually kids go to school, which helps. But it was an amazing gig. And that is why I stayed so long. Often people go to the regional and they leave quickly, but it was very, very family friendly. It was perfect. So it was hard to leave, but it became where I thought, do I always want to do these short flights forever? Or do I ever want to fly somewhere like Hawaii? Or do I ever want to do long haul international? I can't do those things at that job. So I started throwing my application out. I started going to many job fairs. I spent probably 2 years and a lot of money and time going to job fairs, talking to all the major airlines, seeing where do I fit in? What's the best fit for me? Which ended up being a different place than I originally thought after I did a little bit more research. So I ended up at United Airlines, which has been amazing. Typically in the United States, we have about 6% women at the airlines, and United is actually at more like 8%. So we have a lot of women. It's a very diverse company. We have all sorts of different people. Absolutely love it. So I'm currently flying the Boeing 737. I could switch airplanes, but that involves going to class and a little bit of time away from home, and it's not really good timing for me to do that. So once I got that job, we moved to Oklahoma, where I'm from, and it's only about an hour where my husband's from in Texas. And I commute to San Francisco for work, which is a little bit crazy because I always lived in base, but it's worked out. Starting in August, I'll actually be based in Houston, which is a lot closer, Houston, Texas. But I typically will fly out for work and I'll stay gone for 4 days, which is totally different than my previous life. But what comes with that is I might be off work a week or 2 weeks after that trip. I have cut my hours where I'm flying more part-time since I took this job. I'm lucky that I'm able to do that with United. When my kids are grown, I do plan to fly a bit more, but I typically do Hawaii routes. So I absolutely love it because my husband and kids don't love the beach. They're not beach lovers, and I love the beach. So I'll get to fly the flight to Hawaii, and I will get to stay there 30 hours typically, get myself a nap, go to the beach, eat some good food, then fly home. And it's really great. It's like, it's work, but it's a mini vacation. And what's interesting is it took 13 years or so to get to that point that I thought I was signing up for from day one, which the years did fly by when you start having a family and a career. But it's just funny. My uncle said it would take a while, and it did take a little bit of time. But I absolutely love my job at United. I am excited to fly bigger airplanes and go other places when it kind of works out in my family life. But it's been a wonderful, wonderful place to work. Just very different than what I was doing before.
Brandi, can you talk about this picture? Is it an award that you're receiving, or is it a badge?
Yes. So this is our wing ceremony. So when I got hired at United, I had about a 6-month wait for class, and it's a little stressful because they just tell you an approximate timeline. You don't really know when class is going to happen. So your life's kind of on hold, like just waiting for class. You finally get that phone call. Oh, you have class in 2 weeks. Okay. Class is you leave, you're gone. It might be a month. It might be 2 or 3 months. It's a little bit crazy. For a mom, just it's a little bit crazy. So I finally got to go to class, very exciting, but also stressful. And that was the last day of class when you actually earn your wings and your epaulets for that company. So very exciting day, especially because as soon as that picture was done, I was going home, which was great. So
amazing, wonderful. These are great experiences. You want to tell us about Star Wars plane?
Okay, yes. So that was super exciting for me. We have several really cool airplanes at United, but it's just hit or miss if you get to fly them. And I remember so vividly sitting in the terminal, and I had pulled up on my app. My flight was a little bit delayed. I'd pulled up on my app to see where was my airplane coming from and when would it be in. And I saw it was a picture of the Star Wars plane. I thought, no way. Like, am I really going to get to fly it? So I did. I was in LA and I got to fly the Star Wars airplane. I got a lot of pictures because I knew my kids would be super excited. The airplane's gorgeous. And then inside, it's actually themed. And the best part is it plays the Star Wars theme song when you're boarding. Super, super cool experience. I wish I could figure out how to get my kids on this airplane because they would love it. It's so cool. It looks just like that inside, except for it doesn't come with the stormtroopers, but it's adorable. I was so geeked out that day. I must have took 100 pictures. So
love it. Wow.
Yeah, it was awesome. Oh, so this is a great thing. The picture of the ladies. This was actually on my 36th birthday, which, yeah, you end up working a lot of holidays and birthdays and such, but it's my 36th birthday. And I was so excited to have a woman captain. I had flown with a few women first officers at my previous job, but not a ton. So I was super excited when I saw her name on my schedule. And then we had another female captain, jump seater. So I was like, we have to get a photo. This is the best birthday present ever. So that was a super fun trip. It was awesome.
Wow, amazing. On this topic, Brandi, we have a question from Gomri Tej. He's asking, have you ever been told that this job is not for women?
I have, actually. And it's hard when it's sometimes a passenger. I've had that happen. I've had that happen where it's a passenger or maybe a coworker. That's hard also. Another hard stereotype to swallow is if it's not only for a woman, but they really think it's not for a mom. They assume that I'm not taking care of my kids or my house. It's a hard thing, but I have been very, very blessed that my initial job was extremely wonderful and family friendly. And after about a year at United, it became extremely flexible. So,
that's great.
But I have heard that.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, Brandi, that's brilliant. Is that all for your presentation before we move to Miriam?
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, really nice to hear about your story, Brandi. And now I will go to Miriam. We see all your questions in the chat to the audience. We will ask Brandi and Miriam after Miriam's presentation some of your questions. Miriam, on to you. So I will just introduce Miriam. Miriam is 27 years old, and she's younger than me, and she's flown all over Algeria, all over the world. Really impressive. She has a strong passion for technology and entrepreneurship. So after she succeeded in her baccalaureate exam, she decided to join the National Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineering. And while studying, she dedicated her time to human rights and gender equality in education and labor. She traveled to over 20 countries doing work to help with civic engagement projects. And now she's a qualified type-rated commercial pilot on an ATR 72-500. We'll learn more about what that means. And she's completed her studies at CAE Oxford Aviation Academy in the United Kingdom and the United States. She now operates on the right-hand seat as a co-pilot, first officer, right?
Yes.
And she's aspiring to become a captain a few years from now. Welcome, Miriam. Miriam is with Air Algérie. I'm so thankful that she's joining us today because she actually just got landed at the airport where she is right now, off of a flight from Ouargla, and she's now thrust into this live discussion. Miriam, on to you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Salman, for the invitation. And just between brackets, the audience, if you hear backend, those people are working at the airport, so please be patient. Very good presentation. I will jump in the details, but I'm happy because I just knew the Brandi, the captain, and our story is very, very similar at some points. Now, what happened is after I got my baccalaureate exam, I went with my dad to the booth where, universities run their their degrees and everything. And then I wanted to do a pilot. I wanted to do commercial pilot. Unfortunately, the things here in Algeria, we don't have any training school dedicated for commercial pilot. We don't have several schools, so we only have one or two, I guess. And what happened is the same way, it was too expensive for my parents to send me out from Algeria to another country and pay for my education. So what I did, I took some classes at a flight instrument center, and I found that I really, really loved aviation. But I played it strategically. I loved also technology, so I integrated. I had 16.08 in the baccalaureate exam degree. So I went to this school where I did my electrical and electronic engineering bachelor degree. And during that, I participated in several trainings. So the trainings were basically related to personal development, in leadership, in management. And I found that in engineering, women were not very well present. So I tried to do something towards that, to raise the numbers, to help in the statistics. And I found, at that time, I was at my first year, I developed this app, a mobile app about healthcare, where I was qualified at Harvard University for a competition women undergraduate women in business. So I went there, and from there I started doing training all over the world till I got to my third year at university. And there, Algeria luckily opened a contestant, so a concours online where you can participate, and it took place at, so the Algerians will know what this is, at the Bab Zouar University. I went there. I did the contests with more than 11,000 person on the 2014. And right after, I got a job at Microsoft. So that was fascinating for me, one whole year at Microsoft. During the job, I got a reply from the school, the CAE Oxford Aviation Academy, that I passed all the exams and I was qualified to integrate the flight school. So happy, I went there, and on the first day, I met my fiance on the plane going to Oxford. So saying basically the same story as Brandi. Now what happened, I did my flight training, the ATPL 6 months, I did them at Oxford, CAE Oxford Aviation Academy. And then after that, we flew to the US, Arizona, so a whole different environment for me, very sunny. You have, well, it's not a very rich area, but you have LA, it's 6 hours drive, or San Francisco or California. So it's a very different field where to live in and adapt. And it was very good. I flew the first single engine, the PA-28, first exam, and then you do the second exam, and then you do the cross-country exam. Then I had my first solo. This picture, I will come back to it later on. And what happened, at the end, you get to the twin engine, which is this one, the Seminole. And this was the day I got my CPL, so the commercial pilot license. It was, I don't know which date it was anymore, but yeah, it was in October, I guess, 2019, 2018, yeah. And then we flew back to Oxford, where I did my instrument flying on the Seneca. And then I did my multi-crew commercial coordination on the Boeing 737-400. And then after that, I integrated the company Air Algerian and went back to Algeria while I was type-rated on the ATR 72-500. So this is basically to sum it up. But what happens is, as Brandi said, at the end of the line, you will enjoy the flying and everything. But during the training, you will at some point, you will say, I'm not seeing the light I signed up for. I want to fly. I want to see the sky. I want to see the sea from above. I want to live the pilot life. But that thing will take time. It will take up to 3 or 4 years to get there. But you will get there eventually. So it is very expensive, that's true, but and we don't have many scholarships here in Algeria, unfortunately, but outside you can have that. Probably you can look for organizations that can fund your training or participate in international scholarships. Probably you can have this this opportunity. Yeah.
Wonderful, Miriam, wonderful. On that topic, I just wanted to say, the United States has thousands of universities, flight schools, for whatever you're interested in. And if you want to be an international student, you can study in the United States. It's possible. You can get scholarships for even flight school. And so if any of you watching are interested, please contact our Education USA advisor through our Facebook page, facebook.com /Education USA Algeria. We'll put that in the chat as well.
Exactly.
Thank you, Miriam, for that really brilliant talk. I wanted to open it up to you guys and ask you a few questions from the audience. First, we have a question from Tej, I believe. He wants to know, are the requirements to become a pilot basically the same for both Algerian and American pilots?
I can answer this question. So for Algerians to fly here in Algeria, and what you need to have is 2 years at university, technical degree, very well grades at the baccalaureate, and then you will pass the exam. So basically those are the requirements, but you need to have the baccalaureate with very good grades, and then the 2 years technical degree at a technical major. However, while I was studying in the US or in the UK, friends of mine, British or other nationalities, they were freshly graduated from high school, and they integrated the school. So basically, if you want to do that, you can do that. You can integrate straightforward the flying school, but however, you will not be accepted to fly locally here in Algeria. So I guess that's what I have as an insight. Maybe Brandi can add some points what happens in the US. I'm not sure, I'm not aware about it, but globally, that's the idea.
So yeah, in the United States, it is really not, you do not need a degree to be a pilot. There are some airlines or cargo companies or particular jobs that will not hire you unless you have a degree, but there are many jobs that will. It's actually just flight training, and there are several different licenses and certain amount of hours that you must get. But I know people that have gone both routes as far as getting a degree or just going straight to flight school in the United States.
Oh, I something also to add. What's good about the CAE Oxford Aviation Academy is that when you integrate the flying school, you will get another degree about traffic or airport management. Yeah, it's airport, something related about airport management. So you'll get that degree at the same time doing the flying school, which is quite interesting, to be honest.
Wonderful. Miriam, this is for you. We have a question from, I believe it was Karima.
Okay.
The language of aviation is English.
Yes.
That's what is known among most people. What was it like for you to study English? Was it a requirement to become a pilot? How did Air Algeria give you English lessons? What was that like?
Yeah, so the story with me is that while I was at the first year at primary school, I started studying English at an international school, the Egyptian school. Maybe the Algerians will know about it. And then afterwards, when I got to high school, Algerian high school, it was as a language, a side language. But then at the university, that's why I decided to integrate INELEC, National Institute of Electrical Electronic Engineering. It is in English. So my university degree was in English as well. And the conferences that I did before, the trainings that I did before, everything was in English. However, before you get to the CAE or to the flying school, you will have to pass an English language. It's the same thing when you wanted to study master or bachelor degree outside of an English country. So you have to do the IELTS or the TOEFL. So I passed it to IELTS, and then I integrated straightforward the CAE. with international people without doing any trainings on English before. No. Yeah.
Sounds good. Thank you, Miriam. This question is for the both of you. We were asked by Karima. I think it's relevant for both of you. Have you ever been injured? And I think we can extend this to what is the physical stress of the job? Have you had any tough encounters physically on the job? Does the job scare you sometimes? Brandi, did you want to take this one first?
Sorry, it cut out for a minute. Did you ask me to go first?
Yeah,
Okay.
we were just wondering. Yeah. Did you get the question?
Yes, I did. The very ending just cut out. So yeah, I have not had any major physical injuries, thankfully. There were a few stressful moments. When I was based in Detroit, before when I was the first officer, we had to do what's called the walk around in the pre-flight check. So you have to go outside several times a day, regardless if it's pouring rain or ice or snow, and check so many things on the airplane. Well, with my first pregnancy, I flew up until about 6 weeks before I had him. And I was very pregnant, and I almost slipped several times on the ice and the snow. And that was a little bit stressful for me just because of my personal condition. But I thankfully didn't. And I really haven't had any injuries, thankfully. I've been pretty lucky.
That's great to hear. What about you, Miriam?
I mean, for me, I just integrated the company, and I don't think I didn't have anything up to now, but I don't think if something will happen, an injury or something, it can happen at any work. So even if you work at a desk, it can happen to you. You can be injured. So it's a risk ratio that you will take. But I want to point out about being scared of the job. It is, if you want to get into aviation, you need to try it first. Between bracket, it is true that here in Algeria, it's not very accessible for everyone to get into it, but you can at least try when you fly if you're scared about altitude, or if you can take some classes on flight instrument centers, and you find that it's not something that you really like. I guess it's better to not to get into that field before. But if you are excited about altitude, if you're not afraid, you are not afraid about flying, or it doesn't scare you on the first hand, then it's good. It's a good field to get into it. So for me, because I decided to get into it, I did like it before, and it doesn't scare me to fly. Or even if you have a major failure in flight, you're gonna deal with it, and that's it.
Got it. All right. So another question that we have is, we talked about aviation being a male-dominated industry. Have you had any experiences where, the captain or the first officer that you're flying with is a man, and you've had a difficult misunderstanding, or there's a difficulty in trying to communicate with that person because of the fact that you're a woman, and that fact is not well accepted? Maybe you guys could share an example. Brandi, we'll start with you again.
I've been lucky that I haven't had too many instances of this, but I have had a handful. At my previous job, I was lucky when I was a first officer. I flew with very, very nice captains. I flew with the same people over and over. They were great. When I did upgrade to captain, I did have a handful of first officers that did not like working with a woman. They really didn't want a woman in charge, and that could be hard sometimes.
How do you deal with
it? Usually I could, for lack of better words, I could win them over by just showing them that I can fly, and I'm not that I'm smarter than them by any means, but that I've been flying this airplane longer and at this company longer, and I can prove to you that I do know what I'm doing. I typically would handle it that way, and that seemed to work. And as time moved on, I could win them over and things were fine. There's always going to be somebody that thinks a woman shouldn't be here, or maybe just not even at work in general. And that's okay. They can have those opinions, but we all have to learn to work together. Probably the funniest example I had was a passenger. actually, he was sitting on the very front row. And what's so funny is he was sitting next to my husband. Obviously, he didn't know it was my husband. My husband wanted to come on one of my flights, and I had a good layover, so we made it happen. Well, coming back into Detroit the next day, the weather had become bad, and Detroit wasn't accepting all the airplanes, and we only had so much fuel to hold for so long. So eventually we did have to divert, and that is just part of life. So we divert, we go to another airport. When we land, I'm, coming out of the flight deck, and this passenger is just totally appalled that there's a woman. He thinks that the reason we've diverted is because there's a woman in charge, and he's going on and on. Anyways, my husband let this guy go on, and then was like, well, that's my wife. So that was kind of funny. But on the same note, I come up front, and I typically started wearing my hair back when I upgraded to captain so that you could see the 4 stripes and there was no confusion at all. So I would wear my hair back, and I opened the door on the CRJ 200. I opened the door, and I'm going to go outside and talk to the ground crew about what our plan is, because we're not supposed to be there. Like, we need fuel. How long will that take? Let's talk about this. The ground crew member who came up to the airplane said, excuse me, where's your captain? To me. And my husband looked at me, and I looked at him because he's in the front row, and I was like, I am right here, So there's been things like that. And usually I can laugh it off and just kind of move on, but I'm not a very confrontational person. But
that is a brilliant story, Brandi.
It was funny.
I had a good laugh.
Yeah.
What about you, Miriam? Any instances?
Well, I didn't even have handful, as the captain said. The reason is because I didn't have the huge experience that she had, and I'm still fortunate enough that I'm flying on the right-hand seat with very, very qualified and good captains. They have very good CRM here in Algerian. But I can say it only 1 or 2, but you get a feeling when the ground handling services, they come at you and they will say, oh, where is the captain? And they don't want to talk to you straightforward. Instead, they would like to talk more about the captain, who is a man instead of a woman. And they will say, well, the captain is not here, so you can hand stuff to me. And they will say, no, we will wait for him better. And then when the captain comes, they will say, you could have talked to her. I said, oh, okay, we didn't know. But they really know that if he was a first officer, he was a first officer, then they would have talked to him, to the guy, instead of me. But I don't really take this into consideration. I know the society is a male society a little bit, so I try to overpass that and prove. Sometimes I put in my mind that I don't even have to prove to people I'm just a pilot, not really a women pilot, but just a pilot. I fly a plane, and that's it. I'm doing my job. I'm getting paid for it, and that's it. So
great,
yeah.
Great. Well, we have a comment from the audience member. Her name is Salma. She says, amazing stories, ladies. Amazing stories. Very inspiring. You are really brave and a great example for all the females out there. My next question is from Lina Baaziz. I'm going to ask you the question that's the elephant in the room. How has being a pilot changed during the pandemic for both of you? She sends you a virtual hug. Brandi, you want to go first?
Yes, I will. So that has been really crazy. I will say there have been a couple times I was very, very close to losing my job, being furloughed. I am very thankful that United did not furlough any pilots at all so far. And I am so thankful for that. But there has been other things that have happened. So our hours have been severely cut. I'm very, very thankful that my husband's pilot job has not been affected at all by COVID. So we still had one full income. My income is probably most months a third of what it normally would have been, but I have really enjoyed the time home with my kids, and I have just cut back on some expenses. I have kind of started a little bit of side jobs that I've really, really am excited about. But when I am at work, things are also different. I mean, obviously now everybody's used to wearing a mask, but that was new at first. I'm flying an airplane in a mask. Like, we're actually wearing it in the flight deck. for long flights, my flights are long to Hawaii, and that was hard to get used to, talking through the mask and just, rubbing for such long periods, especially if I'm commuting to work all day, then I'm flying all day, and I just had this mask on for a crazy amount of hours. So that's been hard. Also, one thing that I've seen all over the news is people are flying a lot less, the pilots, so people are worried about the safety of it. And our company's been very good to bring us back to training. I have been to training during all of this. Even if I wasn't flying that month, I would go to do some training. And you just are a lot more cautious. So when I start a trip, I might say, hi, I haven't flown in 2 months other than training. So please keep an eye on me and let me know if you see anything. And I'm also find myself studying more. So on my commute to work, I'm actually in the book studying to make sure I have everything correct, the numbers and everything's in my head right, because the law of primacy with flying is that sometimes if you're stressed out, you'll go back to the first thing you learned. Well, that wasn't the airplane I'm on. So I have to be really careful when there's these big gaps in flying. For example, January, I had several trips. February and March, they made me pretty good offers to pay me a small amount of money, but to not go to work. So I took it. And then April, I fly again. So it has been crazy. I've had to study more and just make sure I know what I'm doing when I get there.
Well, for me, just to add a couple of notes for what the Captain Brandi just said, is we experience basically the same thing. The salary will cut to a third or fourth. You don't get to fly much. You don't have the chance to maybe have one flight per month. But what happened is we get checked every 3 months. At least you get 3 landings and takeoffs, and keep your license up to date. Read a lot. Be a lot in your books, make sure to not forget and know your limitations, your standard procedures. And that's what I love most about aviation, is that your job is very well structured and very well noted, and you know exactly what to do and what not to do, and the procedures and everything. So if you stick to that and you really maintain the same level of reading and checking things, you will get eventually out of it, and you not get shocked when you get back on track, when the aviation industry gets back online. But eventually on the global, we didn't fly much. At some point I started looking also for other flights. I'm very young, so I just started my life. So I said, maybe this is not for me for now. Maybe it's going to be for me after that the aviation industry gets back on track, and then I will get back my job again. I was expecting the worst, to be honest. And that's our job. That's how our mindset is. We expect the worst. We look for what's the weather. We degrade the weather. We try to find an alternate destination airport to expect the worst if it happens. So that's our mind, how it works. Eventually, now things are good. Maybe it's going to be better, hopefully, after we pass by this pandemic. But it's very hard to fly also with this, with the mask and not able to talk. And you would scream at some points for the other one can hear you. And so, but that's the pros and cons you get with the work.
Miriam, I know your family is waiting to pick you up at the airport, but do you have time for one last question from the audience?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so we want to know, a final question for both of you. What are your words of encouragement for all of us, or especially the girls out there that want to become pilots and want to work in aviation? What do you motivate? How can you motivate them, and what can you encourage?
I'll go first. Well, for me, I want to say to every girl, also a boy, a guy who wants to do aviation in the future, to not put their hands down and say, well, it's too expensive and it's not accessible here. I'm talking about Algeria. It's not accessible here in Algeria, because it can happen to you at any time. So what I try to say is maximize your chances. Get informed a lot about aviation scholarships, apply whatever it is. Amplify your chances the way you can, but never put in mind that because I'm a boy or I'm a girl, I'm not done for this type of job. So you can do whatever you want if you like it, and you need to be the best at it. That's it.
Thank you. What about you, Brandi?
I would say my advice is a bit similar in that I want every little girl and every little boy to know they can be anything they want to be, regardless if it's a pilot, whatever they want to be, it can happen. I also want to throw out that it's almost always, it's never too late. At my previous job, I did fly with quite a few people that it was their second career. They always wanted to do it. Maybe it didn't work out and it was their second career. And that's great. It's not too late to do it. And they were wonderful, wonderful pilots. They did a great job and they almost appreciated the job more because they had done other jobs that maybe it wasn't their dream or what they wanted to do. I also want to throw out there that nothing worth having comes easy. I kind of flew through my flight training, but there were some periods where I wasn't good at certain things and it did not come easy. And some things took me more than one try. And that's okay. I just kept trying and I moved on from it. And I wasn't naturally somebody who was wonderful at flying. I made good grades and I guess you could say I was book smart, but I wasn't naturally great with directions. Things like engines and carburetors weren't words I had used growing up. I didn't know how these things worked at all. It didn't come easy, but that's okay. I kept trying and sometimes it took me much longer to do something than my husband. And then sometimes there's things I'm better at, which is nice too. So yeah, I want to throw that out there.
These are great parting words. Thank you to our captain, Brandi Cockrell, and First Officer Miriam Shahih. We've had a wonderful time flying in this journey with you. Thank you to our passengers, our audience, for asking your questions and being so interested. We really appreciated hearing your experiences. And to our viewers, please subscribe to our U.S. Embassy YouTube channel. Click that red button so you won't miss talks like this in the future. We're continuing our programming in honor of Women's History Month. On Sunday, we'll be talking to women active in arts and the civil society sphere on our YouTube channel at 5 p.m. on Sunday. So tune in then. And then we'll be talking to the regional head of Microsoft, who is also a wonderful alumna, a woman alumna of our programming. So we also have some fun Ramadan programs coming up. Thank you again to both of you, Brandi and Miriam. I really, really hope that I get to fly in a plane that's being flown by you. Really love talking to you. Take care, everyone, and